It was a time. It was a time of despair. The Great Depression was a decade of high unemployment, poverty, and lost opportunities for many Americans. It was a time. It was a time of war. The Second World War was the deadliest conflict in human history. 16 million men and women served in the United States Armed Forces. Over 400,000 were killed in combat. It was a time for bravery and sacrifice. Every family, every American was touched by the war. Whether through service in combat or on the home front, the common goal was to protect our freedom and way of life. It was a time for loyalty and service. World War II brought the need for America to bolster its armed forces. Young men were asked to go to war to fight for their country. The carefree days of youth suddenly turned to duty. One such young man was Lieutenant Art Nichols, a bombardier from Rhode Island. A letter to his mother. I got your package and Doc's letter today. Boy, the cookies were swell. All the boys send their thanks. Not a one of them was crushed either. You shouldn't bake cookies with tears in your eyes, Mom. You know that isn't good for you. Charlie and I will be all right, so don't you worry. When we're back in town, you'll never even know we were away. And how are you doing, Dad? You better watch out when they get you back in the Army. I'll admit they do need a lot of guys like you that know their stuff, but the Army has changed. See you all later. Good night, good luck, and God bless you. Art. Reality of a country at war is the absence of the husband, the father, the son. Many a wife and sweetheart wrote to their soldier daily, and the soldier wrote back home when possible. John Lingenfelter, serving in the Navy from 1943 to the end of the war, left before his wife could give birth to their first child. His letter to his new daughter, Barbara Ann. My baby. This is your daddy's first letter to you. And if you have any trouble reading this, just ask Mother to help you. You see, she has read a lot of my letters, even way back before you were born. We have not yet had a chance to see each other, but I've seen a lot of pictures, and they fill my heart with pride and joy that the good Lord has let me be your father. If everything goes all right, I expect to see you in the early part of next March, and I know it will be one of the happiest days of my life. Your little letters to me always give me so much happiness, my Barbara. And I hope you will sometimes find time in your busy days to say hello to me. Mother says you've been a very good girl for her, and I know it's because you want to please her who loves you so much every minute of the day. God couldn't have given you a more wonderful mother. I know. You see, I too love her very much, and I know that you and she and I will always be rich in our love for each other. Now that the doctor lets you eat ice cream, I know you and Grandpa will be as thick as thieves. You will soon find out that ice cream is his weakness. And when I come back, we will all enjoy it together. I hope you will think of me often and lovingly, dear, just as I do about you and your mother. I'll be back with you and Mother as soon as I can. Until then, be a good girl. And miss me a little, please. Daddy. June 6, 1944, D-Day. A mighty armada crossed a narrow strip of sea from England to Normandy, France, to begin the liberation of Europe. Private Alfred Bira chronicles his experience in a letter to his wife, Barbara. Hello, honey. This makes the third time I've started to write this letter, and always something comes up to interfere with its writing. You may recall a few months ago I wrote you that the company had been detached from the battalion and was on some special work. At the time, I couldn't say with whom, naturally enough, but I can now. We became part of the combat team chosen to spearhead the D-Day invasion. At about 5 o'clock on the evening of June 5th, it was announced to us that at 06:30 the following morning, we would land on the coast of France. There weren't many men who got much sleep that night of June 5th. For the most part, we sat around, talked, played cards, drank coffee, and did the usual thing a man does when he is worried and a little scared and doesn't want to show it. At 02:30 in the morning, breakfast was served, of which most of us partook heartily since we knew it would be, if not our last meal, at least the last for quite a few hours or perhaps days. We were soon at the rendezvous area. The show had started, and it started with the Navy. The air was filled with deafening roars and the screams of shells. We had no sooner become accustomed to this when over the noise of the battleships we heard the roar of hundreds of motors. The Air Corps were coming in, and come they did, literally in waves, and made for shore and their targets. That their bombs were effective was evidenced by the fires that soon lit up the entire black night. That the enemy was striking back was also soon evidenced by the ack-ack that started to crosshatch the sky. But time to get busy now. Dawn has broken, and dimly in a haze of smoke, we see the beach. Now it's our turn. Men scramble to their feet. Equipment is adjusted, life belts made more secure, for all around us, artillery shells are falling, and already several boats have been hit. Rifles are loaded and the safety taken off. The shore is now right off the bow. The ramp is lowered, and the sergeant and I stepped off into 4 feet of water. I look behind, and the men are already off the boat and scattered for protection against the bullets, which are singing around us, but for the most part hitting the water. It was a hell of a feeling. We had about 500 yards of water to cross. We couldn't run because the water was too deep. We couldn't crouch. We couldn't do anything except just what we did. Wade on into the shore. Finally, we made it. We were on the beach and could begin to fight back and to do our work. Sometime when I can, I'll write, or better yet, tell you about more that happened. I really must go now, darling. Age 18, Robert Cromer went to war, serving in the 309th Infantry Regiment of the 78th Division. Years later, he offers these words. We were privileged to grow up in a time when honor, truth, loyalty, duty, and patriotism were real and meant something. What made the generation great? We were simply a product of our times. Growing up in the Depression was not a great honor. but it was a classroom that taught us to be independent and innovative. We made our own toys out of orange crates and roller skates. We made our kites from newspapers, and we melted lead to pour into molds to make soldiers, cowboys, and Indians. The Depression was a level or two. I grew up in what was considered a middle-class family. By today's standards, we would be considered poor, but nobody came around to tell us so. Everyone was in the same boat, and extended families helped each other. I wore many clothes that had belonged to one of my cousins or my big brother. Getting some bit of clothing of your own that was new was a big event. These things stayed with us after the war was over. It changed us all. Somewhere in the deep recesses of the mind, there is a little voice that reminds us from time to time, you survived. You are alive. Don't waste your life. Do something with it. As President Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, there is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. It was a time. It was a time for greatness. It was a time for the greatest generation.